Yeah, and while he was COVID positive the whole time, it's quite remarkable, to be honest. I will say a couple things. One thing for you, John, is what's interesting is as long as, because I know you, and I know you'll like this. As long as Sanders has been in the Senate, hasn't passed a single climate change bill, and the co-author of the biggest climate change bill in American history, Joe Manchin, it's kind of crazy to be honest. So let's give credit where credit's due.
Yeah, it's wild.
Yeah. So also we've kind of railed on Manchin a little bit the last couple of years. I don't think it's lost on me that he could have done this at any time, but he got the CHIPS Act passed with his maneuver. Also, I know November's 3 months away, but people don't vote, and not everybody votes in November. People start voting September, October early. Democrats vote by mail now. So it's not lost on me that this is passing right before an election. Also, Maya mentioned student loans. From what I understand, this was ready 6 months ago, and I think Biden's going to kind of put that pen to paper in October, right before the election. So I feel like Democrats doing that is very strategic. But here's my overall thought about the week, and I want to ask an important question I've been thinking about all day for you, Maya, is over the last 2 years, we've seen Biden pass gun legislation that has never been passed in this country, climate change that's never been passed. I think he lowered the child poverty by 50%, if I'm sticking with the child tax credits. Fixed the formula crisis, lowering inflation. Gas prices are starting to drop at the right time. Any other administration, you could almost argue this is more successful.
Infrastructure too. Infrastructure.
The fact, like just this past week, if leaving Afghanistan, 95% of the country, regardless of how ugly you looked, wanted to leave Afghanistan, right? You could almost argue, minus healthcare. It's also, we haven't talked about it, government with this new act can now negotiate drug prices, if I'm not mistaken, Maya. So they describe this as the biggest piece of healthcare legislation ever since Obamacare, right? You could argue this is the most successful 2 years in the last, 40, 50 years before American government. I know that, and I'm super engaged. The litmus test that I have, and I'm a younger generation than John, and we argue about this all the time. John's generation is much more engaged, and they show up consistently. My generation, not so much. I could go through my phone and give you 100 people who don't vote, who don't care to vote. And I could do my work interpersonally. I could try to get them to. So my question to you, Maya, is like, in a historic 2 years, despite COVID, despite all the problems that Biden inherited and had nothing to do with him, my litmus test is, believe it or not, the shade room. Whatever makes the shade room, I see if the American, it's in the ethos of the American conversation. You know what makes the shade room is the gas prices, formula crisis, Brittany Griner, which Biden's doing all he can, but he cannot do everything, right? All that stuff makes it. My question is, how do we sexify all the stuff that we've been doing? How do we make that palpable and tangible for people? Do we break down the bills instead of calling it the Inflation Reduction Act? Do we say, hey, we cut child poverty by half? How do we get that to get across the country and realize that everything's not as bad, although it is bad, but we're trying our best? Like, how do we spike the ball in a palpable way?
So first, let me talk about the problem of why it's hard to spike the ball. There's a wonderful book by a historian named Julian Seltzner called Burning Down the House. And it's about Newt Gingrich. But he goes and he talks about the history of reporting in Washington. And after Watergate, a lot of, I would say, journalists were very jealous of Woodward and Bernstein. They wanted to crack the next controversy. Where's the next controversy? And all of a sudden you have a media and press that are obsessed with media, with controversy in media. That's why Clinton, like Whitewater, things that you're like, they're upset about real estate. Like you start all of a sudden having controversies that aren't really controversies. You know, when Hillary Clinton got, she got heat stroke at 9/11. It became, she's dying, she's this. We're right now living in a very clickbait society that a lot of these people are making their grift and their money off of that clickbait. Shade Room is only made on bad faith. That is all that they do. You can't change Shade Room. Why? That's how they make their money. In fact, let me tell you this. I did a podcast I don't know if John disappeared. I see John disappear a
He's
little bit.
there. Yeah.
Okay. I did a podcast where the woman didn't air it, and because she makes her kind of living off of bashing the Democrats.
Okay.
Why she wanted me on, I'm not really sure, but she liked the stuff I was saying, you know, like because I was talking about policy. But then she said, well, what do we do about the establishment Dems, you know, versus the progressives? And I said, first of all, anybody that enters into office becomes part of the establishment. You're making a choice to enter an institution, which means that you are part of that institution. You can say, no, I'm still militant. I'm still this. No, because you're obeying the rules of the Senate or the House. You're part of it. So she did not like that. She wanted me to think that there was a division within in Congress. So let me go back to this. It is difficult to message and to spike the ball because you have a lot of people that make a living off of saying that things are always, always bad. They don't want to say there's positivity because they don't really benefit financially from that. So what we have to do instead is be kind of truthful about it. Like, again, I don't think it benefits us to be like, hey guys, everything's fixed now. It was perfect. We're good. What we have to say is, if I were the Democrats, what I would be doing, and they are doing it. I think Chris Murphy's doing a very good job of it.
Very
He's been
good,
able he's been able to kind of break down things in bite-sized messaging, kind of talk. I don't know who his comms team is, but they're fabulous. And I'm just sorry because, you know, Chris ain't got all the time in the world to be doing his own stuff, you know, let's be honest. But, you know, but they're breaking it down. And they're explaining what's in these things, and they're talking in a way that's very naturalistic. That's saying, listen, you want more? Show up in 2022 and vote. That's what we have to do. We have to be able to say, listen, we rightly need to celebrate these wins, because if we don't, this is something that I think that Obama did very badly. Because I think he just was like, we got work to do. Let's just get it done. But Obama needed to take time. I mean, like, this is why Joe Biden's saying to him, this is a big fucking deal in his ear. He had to remind Obama, this is huge. You know what I'm saying? Because Obama's like, we got to keep going. We got stuff to do. We got to keep going. And so to me, we have to marry a little bit of that Obama, we got to keep going, with a little bit of that, you know, take our time and say, this is a big fucking deal. And guess what? There's more. So all of us have to participate in that. The public has to participate in that. When people get mad, well, why isn't Biden saying this? I wrote a whole article about Biden did say this. Like the day that abortion came down, he literally made a speech and said, okay, so we have to examine what we can do about this, what about this, about this. People were mad that he didn't drop the EO on the same day. And I'm just like, folks, do you understand? There's procedures, there's this. So what we need to do right now is we have to all be part of educating the public on like how these things work, why it takes a moment, why it takes time to get things through, why we don't have the votes, why we need this. But at the same time, I think that all of us need to say, guys, we're pretty happy about what's going on here. This is historic about what's going on. We need to say those words and not worry about the people in the shade room saying like, you guys are ridiculous. Like there's still not enough being done. Be like, yo, keep grifting your grift, but we're going to tell the truth about what's happening.